Part 17. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busrud. Chapter 162. Chapter 162 Lawrence Uman. Unuetian once again restored the prosperity and noise of the past, as if the previous coup and blood wars did not exist. However, some people can feel a completely different temperament from the face of the semi-elves. Compared with before, it seems to have completely changed the race. Lawrence Uman felt this change. As the eldest son of the Uman family, the first heir to the county's position, the Viscount of Lawrence had come to Union City several times. When the semi-elves saw him, the waist pole was still very low, not like it is now. Although the attitude is still respectful, it has already brought a hint of not humble. "Sorry, Master Viscount, the food of our Chamber of Commerce has been booked in advance by the Angra family." It's the Angra family again. Viscount of Lawrence was depressed for a while. He almost traveled through the Chamber of Commerce of Union City these days, but found that all of them had been ascended by the Angle family. Thinking of the semi-elf aristocrats who had visited before, the opponent's distant attitude and some vague hints, the Viscount of Lawrence wondered his chin and sighed secretly. Colin Angle is the real master of Union City now. Nympho. Master Viscount, there is a venture of Lawrence, who claims to be the eldest son of the Earl of Uman. Colin was froze. Obviously he did not expect to meet the people in the Uman family in Union City. For a while, he made a gesture at will and motioned to invite the other party. The Viscount of Lawrence is a handsome and elegant young man. He is about 20 years old. He has a pair of pupils like his father, Earman, and an impeccable smile on the corner of his mouth. Earl's eldest son's faction. But Colin looked at each other's not pleasing to the eye horizontally, but he had never forgotten. The Uman family had great suspicion that he had a conspiracy to assassinate himself. Of course, on the surface, Colin still pretended to be a friendly attitude. "By the Warkins of Lawrence, welcome to Union City. How to give you your hospitality? My father has always said that you are a military wizard and did not expect to be verified so soon. In the first battle of Union City, the glorious deeds of the Black Riding Army and the Semitic Union Guard have spread throughout the northern border, and countless bard poets are singing your name." The words of praise said from the mouth of the Viscount of Lawrence, the handsome face with a sincere smile, even if he knew it was a polite, but still made the compliments feel his sincerity. "You have a reputation. Union City World War I was heroic and bravely I didn't have any power." Colin smiled and invited the other party to sit down by the round table and asked the maid to send coffee. The Viscount of Lawrence looked at the furnishings in the hall while tasting coffee. It seemed to be deeply attracted by those murals and sculptures. After a while, he showed a satisfactory smile, as if he was greatly satisfied from the appreciation. Colin has no such appreciation ability. In his opinion, these famous paintings and sculptures are better to change to gold coins. "I don't know what happened to Union City in Lawrence. If I can help, I might as well say. Actually, you must have heard of it. The North China is currently suffering from famine. Of course, the Uman family territory is no exception. Therefore, my father sent me to Union City this time. Go back to solve the urgent need. However, these days, I have traveled through the major chambers of commerce in Union City, but I found that the food has been acquired in advance. Therefore, I came with a thick face and wanted to buy some food from you." Colin put down the coffee cup and deliberately revealed a difficult expression. "That's it. Actually, I am very willing to help the Uman family. After all, the two of us are also considered in-laws. However, the food gap in the Angra family territory is indeed a bit too big. Even if it is now the food reserves of Union City, it can only be regarded as barely enough, so." After hearing Colin's push, the Viscount of Lawrence still smiled on the surface, but he had already scolded it in his heart. The semi-elf kingdom's agricultural level is well known in the world, and Union City has always been known as the Empire Grain. In the past, the food supplies produced by the semi-elf kingdom in the past are more than half the northern border. Now it is said that it is enough to supply one dweller? Lie Ghost. Master Viscount, I can understand your embarrassment, however, the Uman family does need help now, so, as long as you are willing to sell some food to sell it to us, I can accept how high the price is. Colin's heart is happy, waiting for you. He monopolized the food of Union City this time. In addition to the supply of the Viscounts, the extra part was intended to sell hair money. Now, since he has the grievances to come to the door, he certainly won't be polite. Ahem, you have seen it, since the Uman family is so lacking, of course, I will not see death or not, but I will not sell it to you according to the market price. Thank you, the Viscounts. The Violet of Lawrence thanked him. However, he understood that this so-called market price was definitely not the market price of Union City, but the market price of the North. But now the food prices in the North have risen to the sky. There are still faces saying, "Will not take advantage of people's danger?" Colin Shiren lifted the coffee cup and laughed. "I will arrange people to contact you for specific buying and selling details, you will discuss it with him." Okay, a throne of the Viscount of Lawrence had no choice but to nod. Later, he asked again, "Master Viscount, when do you set off to return to the North?" "Tomorrow is the coronation ceremony of Queen Aisha. I plan to return after watching the ceremony." The Viscount of Lawrence seemed to be surprised by this, but just reminded, "Master Viscount, recently the northern border is not flat. When you go back, you have to be more careful." There was a sneer in the corner of Colin's mouth. "There is a Black Rider escort, I want to see who has the courage to hit me." "Ah, yes, I think about it." V Company Lawrence patted his head and laughed. After drinking coffee, the Viscount of Lawrence said again, "Master Viscount, I wonder if you have heard a rumor that spread in the North during this time." "What rumors?" "The rumor said that this famine in the North is actually a strategy of the Duke of St. Hilda." As soon as Colin moved, he had understood, but on the surface, he asked indifferently, "What strategies?" At the time, the troll broke through the northern defense line to invade the northern hinterland. In fact, it was a drama that the Duke's intention was intentionally performed. The purpose was to paralyze the giant demon and attract snakes out of the hole, so as to create the opportunity to create a battle for the Black Cavalry. Colin drank coffee silently, but he was scolding in his heart. "Isn't this the first strategy of your Lao Tzu, Count Uman? Why do you want to throw the pot to the Duke of St. Hilda now? Didn't you say it? Is this a rumor? It is estimated that there is not much credibility." "Yeah, however, in case this rumor is true, Master Viscount, do you think the Duke of St. Hilda is responsible for this famine?" Colin blinked, silent for a moment, and suddenly said with a solemn look, "If it is true, the Duke of St. Hilda should indeed be responsible for this." Hearing Colin's answer, Viscount of Lawrence finally showed a sincere smile. Later, the two talked a few more words, and Viscount of Lawrence took the initiative to leave. Looking at the back of the other parties gradually away, Colin can already confirm. A storm is about to sweep the north. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 163. Chapter 163 Coronation, Part 1. "Vera, Vera, are you okay?" Colin looked at the girl in front of him, and asked warmly. He just confessed everything to Vera, including the Marquis of Garcia as her biological father, the contradiction between her adoptive father and her biological father. The conspiracy may be hidden. Because the Marquis of Garcia was captured in the Shadow Canyon, and the time to return to the north, Colin could no longer hide these things. He didn't want Vera to return to the Winter City of Winter City ignorant, and return to the adoptive father who had a good intention of her. As for the previous ban on Marquis in Garcia, I can only say that things are urgent to obey power. I believe he can understand Colin's hardship even if he knows it in the future. However, such a cruel and ugly reality is still unacceptable for Vera. At this time, she looked at the ground with a stunned look. Her eyes had no focal length at all, her body motionless, as if she had become a sculpture. Colin sighed, held the young girl's cold hands, and said again. I have sent me a messenger to the east to talk about the use of Marquis of Verson to redeem the Marquis of Garcia when your biological father returns safely. If you can't figure it out, you can ask him in person. Wyra still didn't speak, the whole person seemed to be stupid. Well. When I heard the knock on the door, Colin asked impatiently, what is it? Master Viscount, Miss Vera, His Majesty's crowning ceremony is about to start. Okay, let's come soon. Colin squeezed Vera's chin and turned her side to herself, and said, I know that these things are difficult to accept for a while, but now it is not a time to be sad. The northern border is about to usher in a storm, and I must return as soon as possible. And you, it's best to return to Benjian City with me. No, Vera finally spoke, her voice became hoarse. No, Colin frowned, do you want to return to Winter City? Vera shook his head again, I don't want to return to the north now, at least when I saw my biological father and asked him to know all the original committees, I didn't want to return to the north. Colin wanted to persuade it again, but thought about it, and felt that it seemed good to let Veriki stay at Union City. That line, it is better to stay in Union City, Queen Aisha will take care of you. And when the prisoners of war are exchanged in the future, the probability will be selected between the two borders. Vera nodded and accepted such arrangements. Colin was relieved and was ready to participate in the Queen's coronation ceremony. But he just got up, but found that he was hugged by Vera from behind. Sorry, Clorin, I need a little time. Colin turned slowly, holding the girl tightly into her arms, and comforted, it's okay, I can understand. Thank you, Vera pushed Colin again, go to the coronation ceremony, don't be late. Don't you really go? No, help me apologize to the Queen. Good. Colin held the girl's face, kissed gently, and then turned to leave. Nympho. Aisha Miller, I crowned you in the name of the sacred ancestors of the St. Lorenzo family today. May the supremacy of the Lord bless you and you will not be violated since then. May my master guide your way forward and flatten your obstacles. You should pity your people and guarantee your livelihood. You should respect your fen ministers and give it glory. You should maintain the prestige of the semi-elf kingdom so that it will not be dusty. Remember, you are the master of Union City, the king of half-elf, and the loyal minister of the St. Lorenzo family. May you live up to the expectations of the semi-elf people and the trust of the Emperor the Lords Rongguang. Half-elf Palace, in the Palace of Politics. Prince Harrison was wearing a golden robe and holding the semi-elf crown, and he chanted his lengthy prayer with a somber expression. His face was pale, his expression was a bit sluggish, and it seemed that he had not rested recently. Seeing this scene, Colin could inevitably raise a conspiracy to succeed. He knew that he had successfully planted the seeds of hatred in the hearts of Prince Harrison, waiting for the future that the future will be blossomed and surprise to the St. Lorenzo family. Thinking of this, Colin couldn't help but look at Empress Madara standing on the side of Harrison. The Queen, who is beautiful, is similar to Vera's facial features, is looking at Colin at this time. Four eyes are opposite. Colin immediately put on a perfect smile and nodded towards the other party. Queen Madara also laughed. A pair of watery eyes blinked and stared at Colin without blinking. It seemed to be saying, young people, you successfully attracted my attention. At this moment, Harrison finally worn the semi-elf Cowdy crown above Aisha's head. When the queen wearing the crown stood up to face the crowd, all the semi-elf aristocrats present drawn out the sword, kneeling on one knee, and swore. My king, I vowed to be loyal to you, from today to forever. Queen Aisha raised his skirt and returned to his Feng Chen. Subsequently, the queen personally registered 4 knights, serving as her swordsman, bower, shield, and horses. The knight is a member of the Miller family without exception. They will accompany Queen Aisha from now on and become her guardian knight. At this point, the coronation ceremony was officially ended. Queen Aisha wore a semi-elf crown and left the political hall under the cluster of the crowd. She will host a dinner in the banquet hall to entertain the St. Lamazo royal family and the nobles who come to watch the ceremony. Nympho. It was getting late, and the lantern was at the beginning. On the floor of the banquet hall of Hongtong Mupu, there are 3 long square tables, which are full of various wines and dishes on the table. Creamy salmon pies, honey pine nut cake, smoked grilled salmon salad, and the champagne collected by the royal family. The brightly dressed maids stand on the long table like sculptures, and they are ready to serve the guests who come to eat at any time. Unfortunately, there are not many guests who come to patronize. When Colin walked into the hall alone, the banquet had not officially started. He came straight to the long table, ignored the food at the table, and went straight to his gold deer blood wine. According to common sense, in such formal occasions, deer blood wines will not be placed on the table, but obviously, this bottle of deer blood wine is specifically instructed by Queen Aisha to prepare. At this time, a mature and lazy voice suddenly sounded, "Viscount, do you need to add some lemon?" Colin looked back and saw Queen Aisha standing behind today. She was wearing a fiery red dress, a golden crown on her golden hair, and a bright smile on her face made the crystal magic light dim. Okay, Colin smiled and understood that the Queen wanted to help him cover up the smell, and accepted the kindness of the other party. By the way, Vera is unwilling to return to Binjian City with me, but wants to stay in the Marquis of Garcia, such as Union City, so I hope you can help take a look. No problem, this is my honor. Well, remember, don't let her return to the Winter City, even if the Duke of St. Hilda sent someone to remind him, don't let go. I see. At this moment, there was a commotion in the door of the hall. Colin looked up, and saw Queen Madara led Prince Harrison in. I don't know if it was a coincidence. Empress Madara also wore a long red dress, revealing slender arms and large-scale smooth back. Between walking, the willow waist was light and the style was unlimited, which attracted a lot of aristocratic gentlemen. Queen Aisha quickly stepped forward. The melodious music sounded in a timely manner, and the banquet officially started. This chapter is finished. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 164. Chapter 164 Coronation, below. Da-da. The sound of the crystal shoe stepped towards the floor towards Colin, and the wonderful rhythm knocked in his heart, making him look back to see who the owner of the sound was. Then he saw Queen Madara, who was walking towards him. Angle Viscount, can you be fortunate to have a song with you? Faced with the invitation of the beautiful queen, Khalil's heart was in his heart. This woman is afraid of doing things. It is my honor to dance with you, but I'm sorry, His Royal Highness, I just invited Queen Aisha. Who knows that Empress Madara does not seem to be going to let go of Colin so easily, but turns directly to Queen Aisha, and asked with a smile. His Majesty, I wonder if I can borrow me for a while. Of course, Queen Aisha said with a smile, and at the same time, he dumped Colin a look of blessing. Clinton was silent, so he had to hold Queen Madila's jade hand and walked into the dance floor of the lobby. The melodious harp, accompanied by the brisk wind pillets, played an elegant movement. Colin stood in the center of the dance floor, staring at Queen Madila's eyes, supported her smooth back with her right hand, and pulled her into her arm. Queen Madila's beautiful face hanging with a charming smile, squinting her eyes slightly, and letting Colin lead himself to complete one dance step after another. In the sound of music, the Queen of Colin and Miles showed amazing tacit understanding, as if they had known each other for many years, and interpreted the beautiful palace dance to the extreme, which was pleasing to the eye. In the eyes of everyone appreciated, Queen Madara suddenly whispered, "Angelin, thank you for teaching Harrison. You are so polite, His Royal Highness, this is what I should do." Colin replied. Colin is not the son of the Baron who has no power and can only follow the waves before. With the forces he is now controlled, even if he faces the Empire Queen, there is no need to bow his knees and trembling. What's more, this incident itself was first provoked by the Queen. Colin had to give warnings and fight back. Otherwise, the other party would definitely try to die the semi-elf kingdom that has been regarded as a ban. Hearing Colin's answer, Madila not only was not angry, but also bloomed a perfect smile. At this moment, the touching temptation revealed by the Queen made the noble youths in the hall stunned and fascinated, and they couldn't wait to replace Angler's Viscount and danced with His Royal Highness. However, Queen Madara found that although she danced with a smile on the face of Colin, her eyes were still clear, and she could even notice a hidden vigorous vigilance and fear. "Viscount, I am not your enemy," Queen Madara said again. "If something before, you have misunderstood me, I hope this dance can make you feel my apology." "You are heavy, His Royal Highness, I only respect you and have no misunderstanding," Colin responded casually, and his heart was slandered. "Am I so cheating?" Queen Madara had a crisp breast, and the entire upper body was affixed to Colin. At this time, the distance between the two has exceeded the limit of normal communication dance. Colin suddenly stomped the wrong rhythm. Later, he heard that Queen Madila whispered in his ears and whispered, "Angle Viscount, I am serious, your teaching of Harrison actually fits my heart. You can say that it is the fate of the St. Lorenzo family for thousands of years. Even if you don't teach him, I will do this sooner or later. So, my gratitude is sincere. Moreover, if everything you say to Harrison comes from sincerity, then we are actually natural allies." Khalil couldn't help but tilted his head slightly and looked at Queen Madara in his arms. A pair of bright and charming eyes seemed to have a hearty magic, which made Colin almost unable to be obsessed with it. "His Royal Highness, I don't understand what you mean." Seeing that Colin was still pretending to be silly, Queen Madara laughed. "Colin," Queen Madila exhaled like orchids in Colin's ears, and his name became extraordinary. "In fact, the power of this alliance must be far beyond your imagination. Think about it, if you want to understand one day, you can come to me." Colin blinked and continued to pretend to be stupid. Inner heart degradation. "Am I so cheating? In a few simple words, I want to let me die for you." Seeing that Collins did not respond to herself, Queen Madila was not discouraged, but laughed again. "As a thank you, I will send you a little secret." "Please say." Colin finally spoke, and wanted to see what the Queen could play. "The sword I gave you, my brother, do you know its origin?" "The Blade of Trial." Khalil's heart nodded. "Yes, there was some understanding. It is said that it was the earliest Duke of Saint Sain." "Do you know the end of the Saint Simon family?" "Yes, I heard that I have been destroyed." Suddenly the smile on Queen Madila's face suddenly became unpredictable. "A paladin family, how easy it is to cut off the inheritance." "Oh," Khalil browed, and it was not too surprised. "Do you know their whereabouts now?" Queen Madila no longer answered. Colin saw this and did not ask. In fact, he is not very interested in this family. If it was not given to Blade of Judgment, Colin would not intersection with them at all. After a while, Queen Madara suddenly looked at Queen Aisha's direction and laughed. "Someone is dedicating to your little lover." Colin saw that Queen Aisha was talking to a young man. And the young man, Lawrence Uman, who had just visited Colin yesterday. Colin smiled slightly and denied, "His Royal Highness, have you misunderstood something? How can Her Majesty the Queen be my lover?" Queen Madara smiled charmingly, apparently did not believe Colin's denial. However, she did not continue to entangle on this topic, but instead said, "Is the people of the Uman family hated?" "His Royal Highness, my sister is married to the Uman family. Colin would not admit that he was disgusted with the Uman family. Really, sorry, but I just don't like them, especially those red eyes. Queen Madara seemed to mention it inadvertently, just like the original Saint Sin family. People panicked. Colin's heart was surprised. Is the Saint Simon family also a red pupil? Yet Queen Madara suddenly laughed deeply. As if it was hit by a lightning, Colin's expression was instantly solidified. The lazy voice of Queen Madara came again. Do you know how the lady of the Earl of Uman from the Suduo family died? How died? Queen Madila no longer speak. Colin understood that the other party was deliberately hanging his appetite, and it is estimated that he wanted him to join the so-called alliance. He certainly won't be fooled. However, the information given by the Queen just now has enough to make clear imagination. The names seemed to be uncontrollable, and they emerged from his mind. The Saint Simon family, the Savi family, the Uman family, the Suduo family. Earl, M.S. Penny, Lawrence, M.R.S. Suduo, voila. Colin felt like he had seen a clue and connected all the previous doubts. With all the attention, everything around him seemed to be away from him. Unconsciously, the harp jumps out of the last note. At the end of the song, the Colin stopped dancing like a puppet. But immediately, he felt a pain on his feet. When I looked down, I saw that the Queen Madila stepped on his feet without politely, and crushed it hard. Dancing with me, even let me go, angle line, you are so rude. Colin grinned with his teeth, quickly apologized to the Queen, and then sent her back to the side. Immediately afterwards, he smiled and greeted the Viscount of Lawrence next to Queen Aisha. By the Viscount of Lawrence, we met again. End of the second volume. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 165. Chapter 165 Eye of the third volume. Bronze Town, located in the southwest of Benjian City, is named after a brass ore buried underground. There are not many local residents in the town, and most of them are slaves worked in the mining area. But now, these slaves who should have been squeezed in the dark mining areas are like free people wandering leisurely on the street. If they are not so weak and thin, they are basically no different from the free people. The reason why this happened was not the conscience of the miners' conscience, and the sudden imagination of the slaves had a vacation, but because all the miners ran away. If you don't run anymore, your life is gone. The civilians in the town of Brass are running out, let alone officials and mines in the town. Under the famine, today's Brass town has become a huge gunpowder barrel, and slaves who can't eat enough will no longer go to the leather whip of the supervisor. They are almost starved to death. You still want to let me work hard? Intersection. As a result, the hungry slaves launched the rebellion. They smashed the handcuffs on their feet, killed the supervisor, and rushed to the town's guardian army, successfully occupied the town. This small town that used to be quite prosperous, after this rebellion, gradually became desolate and depressed. The slaves who were hungry and green began to find everything that can be stuffed into the stomach in the town. However, we are still hungry. In a tavern in the center of the town, several slave leaders were gathered at this time. They must solve the problem of food, otherwise, this town will really become a ghost. You said you can find food. A slave leader looked at strange guests on the opposite side and asked vigilantly. Sal nodded and said confidently, of course, as long as you listen to me, you will definitely fill your stomach. Then, where can you find food? Sal said, Benjian City. The slave leaders stunned, and then laughed. Boy, do you play us? That's the castle of the noble master, there are knights inside. Not only the knights, but also a large number of troops. Do you want us to send us to death? Nympho. Facing the doubts of everyone, Sal's face unchanged and slowly raised a finger. First, There are not many troops in Binjian City. Most of the private forces of the Angra family have already been buried on the Sky Ice Field, and the rest were brought to Yunyu City by Angra. Although a group of recruits were called, the combat effectiveness of these recruits was weak. Without waiting for the slave leaders to refute, Saul raised another finger. Secondly, the Viscount Angle is not in the city now. 3 knights in the city follow him to Yunyu City, and a rebellion who has gone to Binghu town to calm down. Only the last night took the ice in the Ice Rock City. The slave leaders looked at each other and seemed to be moving. A proud smile appeared at the corner of Sal's mouth, and a finger was erected again. Third, I have contacted the slaves in the city, and they will launch a rebellion tomorrow night. So, what are you afraid of? At this moment, the slave leaders couldn't sit even more, and they talked about it. In the end, one of the slave leaders suddenly asked Saul, "Why do we believe you?" Saul stood on both hands. "Do you have other choices? Either stay in Boner town to pursue or go to Binjian City with me, fight." This sentence finally made most of the slave leaders look at each other, and a flame called ambition was burning in their eyes. After some fierce disputes, the slave leaders finally unified their opinions. "Okay, let's go with you." Nympho. Chen 11 slight light slowly revealed from the east, and slowly tore away the darkness shrouded in the earth. The hazy light reflects the snow on the ground, flashing with crystal light. The slaves in Boner town have gathered on the wilderness of the north of Zhen before the dawn. They are about to be hungry, and they can't wait to go to the place where the leaders are promised full of food. Saul looked at the more than 5,000 slaves behind him, and was full of ambition. Like a real general, he stretched out his point to the direction of Binjian City and ordered it loudly. Entering. Unfortunately, the slave's weak response made his performance a bit funny. However, this little embarrassment could not extinguish the ambition of Sal's heart. He seemed to be a real lord, and he was leading his own army toward glory, moving towards victory. However, not waiting for them to go far, the ground suddenly trembled slightly. The grass leaves began to shake, and the crystal dewdrops fell down bit by bit, and eventually fell into the soil. The trembling of the earth became more and more powerful, and even the grass leaves were broken, and they fell helplessly and fits tightly with the earth. Da-da. As if the rolling spring thunder exploded the earth, and it seemed like Tao Tao's floods came. The dry weeds and broken sand on the ground shook, as if the boiled hot water, boiling. The endless sound of horseshoe came from a distance, as if to tear the whole land. Saul suddenly turned around and saw countless black shadows appearing in the east, and instantly filled the entire earth. There was no trace of gap. The wind and the world became colorful, and even the sun that had just rose was covered up by the black flag on that side. The dense cavalry swept towards the slave rebels in Boner town with a row of mountains and sea. The tall horses will not care about the existence of weeds and gravel, and galloping on this piece of ground with thin snow. The unpopular snow was broken under the horseshoe, exuding dazzling glory in the sun. 1. The harsh arms sounded. That was the order of attack. Suddenly, Saul was like a ice cave, her brain was blank, and she was stupidly stunned in place, as if it became an ice sculpture. The ambitions, unwillingness, dreams, and the shadow buried deep in the memory, in front of this destroyed cavalry charge, melted like ice and snow. It's the army of the Lord, run. In the face of such an offensive, the slave rebels did not even dare to raise even the idea of resistance, and Hulu rushed. However, such behavior is actually no different from suicide. It is to lend to this group of slaves and 2 legs, and they cannot run over the cavalry in the charge. Kill. Countless cavalry roared, like the wolf entered the flock, and rushed into the slave rebels, and started a bloody massacre. The blood flowed wildly, and his head was thrown away. Before the Black Riders' unmatched soldiers, the 5,000 rebel slaves were no different from 5,000 pigs. Colin chopped a rollover in place, and seemed to be scared by the Black Army's charge. It wasn't until the other person's head was flying in the air. With the light of the morning 11, Colin suddenly discovered that the skull seemed to be a bit familiar. Isn't this the big filial son? With a sneer in his heart, Colin had no intention of staying at all, and he ran forward. As if it was just a ants just killed a ant. This chapter is finished. The original vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 166. Chapter 166 Competition. The rebellion of Benjian City has been advanced. The rebellion that was originally planned to launch in the evening broke out at noon. The reason is also very simple, even ridiculous. The slaves couldn't bear it anymore. These young slaves who are so hungry, wanting them to implement them strictly in accordance with the plan, are simply dreaming. Looking at the granary in front of him, the slaves couldn't bear it, and rushed up directly, throwing the leader's plans to the clouds. As the sound of shouting sounded, the slaves gathered in several other granary in the city also simply torn out the disguised mask and rushed up to grab food. Grab food instead of putting food. Slaves without order make the words grabbing food filled with bloody taste. Numerous slaves who were hungry rushed into the granary as crazy and wanted to make some food. However, the slaves carried out of the food would be immediately surrounded by the companions who rushed in, and finally they fought without their heads. Countless slaves fell, and countless slaves squeezed them in. The hysterical emotions drowned their minds, and could not need to dispatch the city defense army at all, and the granary became the battlefield for slaves to kill each other. No one would want to grab food from the inside. The precious food is scattered like this, and the slaves are trampled on, and even covered with blood. Some magical slaves saw that the granaries could not rush in, and they turned to kill the civilians' homes. As a result, men's screams, women and children's crying. These slaves formed a gang, wandering in the city, burning and looting, all evil, as if venting the anger accumulated in the past. Under the leadership of the Shire Knight, the city defense army dispatched urgently. However, at this time Benjian City was indeed the weakest. Originally, the army of the Angra family had suffered heavy losses in the giant demon war at the beginning of the year. And Baron Raymond led a group of troops to suppress the rebellion of Binghu town a few days ago. Today, there are only less than 2,000 regular army in the hands of Charles, and they are all recruits. In addition, there are 3,000 reserve. But at this time, whether it is a recruit or reserve, it must be on the battlefield, otherwise Benjian City will definitely destroy the slave riots. Fortunately, although the slaves are crowded, they have the ability to organize. Forget it, they can't talk about the organization at all, and they are a group of lunatics who just want to grab things. The Cavaliers of Charles first arranged for the heavy soldiers to hold the Red Castle, and then sent troops to occupy 4 city gates, locked the slave rebels in the city, and finally sent small stocks to the city to maintain order. All the rebels in the city were killed. However, he deliberately did not send a soldier to several granary in the city. Because the Cavaliers of Charles understand that these granaries are the key to the rebels. Once they are sent to a troops, it is a chaotic bloody battle, and the city defense army, which has been worried about, will definitely lose heavy losses. Therefore, after discussing with the steward of Iman, the Cavaliers of Charles decided to abandon the granary and stabilize the situation in the city. As for those grains that were ruined, they could only give up at this time. However, the steward of the Iman told him that Angle Viscount was already on the way back, and he returned a large number of food from Union City. Now the food in the city is spoiled. This strategy of Charles was proven to be very successful. In the evening, the situation in Benjian City has basically stable, and the rebels scattered in the city have been basically eliminated, leaving only a few granaries in chaos. At this moment, the faint sullen sound began to come, and the ground was slightly shaking. Of course, the Cavaliers of Charles can't be familiar with this. This is the upcoming sign of the cavalry army. He immediately rushed into the head of the city, looking at the direction of the east of the city. There was a piece of smoke there for a long time, and immediately, a black line appeared at the horizon and spread quickly. Under the reflection of Xiaoguang, the soldiers who descended from the sky. The eyes of Charles Cavaliers became red instantly, because he saw the black flag that made him dream of his soul, and the black armor that was familiar with the extreme, the black war horse. The Black Army. Open the gate. The Cavaliers of Charles shouted and ordered. In the sound of squeak, Dongcheng Gate opened immediately. In a blink of an eye, the Black Cavaliers pioneer, the rushing, rushed into the Binjian city along the open city gate. Nympho. Cavalry, the cavalry is killed. The slaves at the granary were still fighting for food, but the shouts and rumbling horseshoe came immediately. To surrender, do not kill. The cavalry rode into 5 columns, and it was galloping on the wide streets of Binjian City Anyone who stopped them was hit to the ground and crushed into mud. At this time, no matter who can stop their charge, even if there may be innocent passers-by to dodge, they cannot delay their speed. When they just grabbed the food, they were extremely vicious. At this time, when they met a real elite army, they instantly stunned. Before the black cavalry rushed to the granary, the slaves gathered in it scattered and escaped. There are also a few who are not afraid of death. They even rushed towards the black army with simple weapons, but they need not say more about their end. As if he had stabbed a honeycomb, the slaves fled in the exclaiming sound. Unfortunately, where did they escape the chase of the cavalry? With a bombardment, dozens of figures were hit by the horses that came out of the horse, spraying blood in the air, and I didn't know how many bones were broken. A team of black clubs seemed to cut the sharp knife into the butter, and the speed did not slow down at all, so they trampled by the slaves. The cavalry bent over and wielded the knife immediately, and easily cut the row of people's heads with the help of horsepower. Countless blood sprayed into the air and sprinkled the earth again. Hundreds of cavalry galloping through the streets in front of the granary, leaving blood red. This is undoubtedly a massacre. The rebellious slave army seemed so weak and ridiculous in front of these elite black troops. Just once, they killed their liver and gallbladder. The surviving slaves were scattered, and they didn't even have the courage to look back at each other, and they fled all the way. But unfortunately, they will encounter the black sweeping team elsewhere. At this time, if you look down from the high altitude, a black dragon team is like a black dragon, shuttled back and forth on the streets of Binjian City, and the slave army was fragmented and flesh. Nympho. When the Khalin led the main force of the black cavalry to the Binjian City, he found that the rebellion in the city had been basically cleaned up by the pioneers. The housekeeper Iman and Charles Cavaliers have also welcomed his arrival outside Dongcheng Gate. Master Viscount, welcome to go home. Colin haha smiled, his legs were gently pinching his belly, and a big channel. Walk home. Today's editor-in-chief recommended. Add 2 chapters to show celebration. Big guys, get your tickets soon. Intersection. This chapter is finished. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Ludo Busroot. Chapter 167. Chapter 167 Red Eyes. Under the cold moonlight, Colin came to a balcony in the Red Castle. Behind the maids were busy arranging tables and chairs, and brought 4 cups of champagne and dried fruit, and then left lightly. Take it, Colin said with a smile to Iman, Kinksy, and Charles. Yes, Master. Yes, Master Viscount. The 3 of them were seated and raised the wine glass to touch together. After pursing the wine, the butler Iman wanted to report to the recent government situation of Binjian City to Colin, but saw Colin raising his hand to stop him. Don't worry, this time I came back from Union City. I have a doubt that I have been lingering in my mind without solving it. I guess I can't think of other things. Master, what are your doubts? Kalinma was holding his chin and asked, the wife of the Count Uman is the sister of the former Suduo, right? Yes. What color is the pupil of the Earl? Ayman turned to look at Quincy. Apparently, the old man who had been a tax officer in Binjian City for decades should be clear. Master Viscount, Earl's pupil color is blue. You sure? I'm sure. I looked at her growing up. Even if I closed my eyes, I could remember her face. A proud smile appeared in the corner of Colin's mouth, and it seemed that something in his heart was confirmed. But because of cautious, he still asked, is there a member of the pupil color in the Suduo family who had the color of the pupils? Red. Quincy thought of it, shook his head. No, the red pupils are rare as far as I know. The pupils of this color have never appeared among the members of the Suduo family. That's right, Colin patted his palm excitedly. He finally understood that in Unyu City, Queen Madila revealed only half of the little secret. Ayman, Kingsley, and Charles looked at each other, apparently did not keep up with Colin's idea. Colin smiled and explained, Count Uman is a red pupil, but the Count is blue pupil, so why is the Viscount of Lawrence born, but is the red pupil? The steward of the Iman frowned, even more puzzled. Quincy also carefully reminded, adult, the red pupil of the Viscount of Lawrence was passed on to him by Earl Uman. There should be no problem. No, there is a big problem. Colin's corner of his mouth hung a mysterious smile. However, how to explain this genetic problem, Colin was a little worried. There is no P in this world. It is still very shallow for people's understanding of his inheritance, and he does not understand the difference between hidden genes and explicit genes at all. In their understanding, the son of the red pupil's father gave birth to a red pupil, which is normal. But if you understand the basic theory of genetics, you will understand that this is not necessarily. The red pupils are very scarce, indicating that this is a hidden genetic character. The hidden genetic character wants to be expressed in the child, then he must get a corresponding hidden gene from his father and mother. In other words, Count Uman and Earl must have a hidden gene of red eyes to give birth to a red-eyed son. Count Uman is okay. Their family has always had red-eyed genes, but the Suduo family has no. What's more interesting is that the most loved lover of the Count Uman Pani, but it is red eyes. According to genetic laws, 2 children born with red eyes must be red eyes. Just as both parents are single eyelids, the child must also be single eyelids, the factors that exclude the next old king and genetic mutation. Therefore, the pupil color of the Machman family's pupils is very interesting. It should not be the red-eyed sister-in-law, the Viscount of Lawrence, but red eyes. And the illegitimate son of red-eyed Walla, but blue eyes. Colin was also worried that he had remembered wrong and confirmed to Ayman again, my brother-in-law Walla, what is his pupil color? Although Yuman was confused, he still replied, it's blue, master. Sure enough. Colin confirmed. There is also a pharaoh and genetic mutation in the Earl Castle. This very small probability incident is judged in accordance with the genetic rules and the pupil color of the pupils of the Earl. The illegitimate son Walla is actually the child of the Count Uman and the Count of Earl. And the sister-in-law Lawrence should be the child born to the Earl of Uman and his lover Penny. So why, Count Uman wants to raise his sister-in-law as an illegitimate child, but the illegitimate child is regarded as the first heir of his title. This kind of violation of common sense can only have one explanation: the identity of the lover Penny. I am afraid that it is noble than the Earl of the Suduo family. Based on what Queen Madara said, the Saint Simon family, who was supposed to cut off, also had red eye genes. So, the truth of the matter is not difficult to guess. Parla's lover Penny, I am afraid it is the descendant of the Saint Sima family. Colin knew at the moment why Earl Muman attached great importance to the illegitimate son of Walla, not only helping him to marry the sister-in-law of the Angle family, but also trying to assassinate Colin and help Vala to get a barren family business. If you are an ordinary noble illegitimate child, how can he get the help of his father's strong help? Count Uman's doing this is obviously out of guilt of his real sister-in-law and wants to make up for it. If you want to go down deeply, when the Count Uman presented the Duke of St. Hilda to the Duke of St. Hilda, I am afraid that it was really bad. His original intention should be to use this to induce chaos in the north, so that the St. Simon family took the opportunity to come back and report the hatred of the year. Unfortunately, the two brothers of St. Hilda were tall and did not go to him. And this time the EU city coup and the rebellion that is currently erupting in the northern border, I am afraid that there is also the shadow of the St. Simon family. Colin originally suspected who could arrange the Black Army in the Shadow Canyon The Duke of St. Hilda could not do this, but the St. Simon family had this ability. For more than 300 years, the Duke of the Bianjin was defeated the main force of the St. Simon family at the time, thus opening the prelude to the decline of the Pavilion family. With the incomparable hatred between them and the San Hilder family, it is not difficult to get the east. It can be inferred that the coup in Union City is probably not related to the St. Simon family. For example, the Sivarev family may always be a pawn of the San Sima family. If you think about the time when the Sivas family falls, you will find that it is after the St. Sima family loses power. Therefore, the relationship between the two families must not be simple. The more Colin thinks, the more he feels that his guess should be from the truth of the matter. The only thing that made him uncertain is what role did the Duke of St. Hilder play in this series of conspiracy. Colin doesn't think he thinks, he is just a person who is playing by the St. Sima family. Since Queen Madara knew that the St. Simon family was hiding in the dark, the Duke of her brother St. Hilder didn't make sense. If you think about it, in the first conspiracy of the San Simon family for the north, the Duke of St. Hilda is actually the person with the largest profit. In this second conspiracy, the Duke of St. Hilda was not too loser. Although the annihilation of the Black Army greatly reduced the military strength of the northern border, he also helped him completely remove hidden dangers. Duke of St. Hilda deliberately hides the strength of the Holy Realm. I am afraid that it is to stabilize the current situation. As long as he can continue to stabilize, it may be him if he laughs to the end this time. Of course, the San Simon family will definitely not let the Duke of St. Hilda as wishful, and the next northern border will definitely be upset. Thinking of this, Colin suddenly asked, by the way, who do you remember, what is the clan emblem of the St. Simon family? Kinksy thought for a while, and replied. Adults are colorful tigers. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 168. Chapter 168 Situation. Master, what you say, seemingly some reason. The Iman steward chose to speak carefully. However, the hesitation in his eyes still made Colin understand, so that those who did not understand the basic principles of genetics understood the complex relationships of the children of the Uman family, which was really unrealistic. Yaimen, if you are free, you can have all kinds of peas, and see if two peas with dwarfs can be hybridized with high stems, and then you can understand, why can I be sure that Valo must not have a child in private the reason. Yes, Master Ing respectfully recorded the matter, and he was really prepared to study it in the future. As for the things I just said, no matter if you believe it, you will bury it in your heart for a while. Don't pass it out. The development of the situation in the northern border should be confirmed by my inference. Yes. Colin raised his toast again, drank a drink with his 3 family members, and then said, okay, you can tell me the situation of the territory now. Yes, Master Yaiman cleared his throat, and then began to report to Colin's development. In the past 4 months of Colin's departure, the financial fiscal was recovered slightly from the disaster in the invasion of the giants, but the situation was still not optimistic because of the recent food crisis. Fortunately, Colin brought a lot of food from Union City this time, and this situation must be changed soon. Benjian cities' tax reduction measures are very successful. More and more businessmen now regard Benjian City as a transit station for border trade. With the current influence of Colin in Union City, more semi-elf merchants will come to Benjian City in the future. Therefore, the city of the first business trade in the border in the mouth of Quincy seems to have first seen the prototype. Of course, such far water can't save near the fire. At present, the Finial family's finance can only be supported by the loan of the Tulip Chamber of Commerce. However, after controlling the wealthy semi-elf kingdom, as long as Colin did not immediately perform poor soldiers, Queen Aisha fully supported him. This is the benefit of raising rich women. That's right, Colin thinks it is Queen Aisha, who is raising, instead of the other. After all, Queen Aisha's throne helped her win in one hand, so it was really okay. After speaking, the economic aspect is military. The 3,000 infantry trained by Baron Raymond has basically formed combat effectiveness, and the 1,000 cavalry trained by Charles Cavaliers is almost on fire. Of course, let them deal with the slave rebellion, but if they want to go to the battlefield to deal with the regular army, I am afraid it is still enough. However, the 6,000 black army brought back this time can completely make the Angle family's military strength immediately change. If you can add the silver monthly guard that can be dispatched at any time, Colin has now become a military force that cannot be ignored in the north of the empire. Especially in the current situation that is coming, the weight of Chloria is heavier. Yemen, you sent someone to the Winter City to help me ask the Duke of St. Hilda to marry Miss Villa. Master, this kind of thing should be more suitable for you to go to the Winter City in person. Ing hesitated, or persuaded. But I can't go now that the rebellion in the north is frequent. I still sit in the Benjian City. Besides, I have asked the Duke once in the Lion Roar Castle once, but the Duke did not agree. Now the old thing is the old thing. Remention, even if I am not present, I am not too rude. Iman thought about it, and felt that Colin said that it also made sense, so he no longer forced. Okay, master, I will arrange it. Colin nodded with satisfaction. At this time, he would not go to Yongdong City himself. In addition to sitting in the Benjian City, he was also worried that he would be calculated by the gloomy Duke. In the current situation in the northern border, as long as Colin is sitting firmly in the Diaotai, whether it is the St. Hilda family or the St. Sin family, he needs to win him. Therefore, Colin feels that if the Duke of St. Hilda is a bit wise, he will definitely not refuse his kinship this time. In addition, sending people to pay attention to the movement of Marquis Dowson and Count Uman, and report to me at any time. Colin felt that the heaviest card in the hands of the St. Simon family should be these two. I just don't know if there are other families who join in. Yes, Master. Yemen nodded, and then reminded, Master, I'm afraid we should pay attention to the trend of the troll. Giant demon. Colin realized that he almost ignored the enemy of life and death in the north. Although the main force of the troll was just wiped out by the Black Army, with the heritage of this empire, it is not impossible for a 100,000 army to put together a 100,000 army in the near future. This kind of strength also has a pivotal weight in the current northern border where the civil strife is about to start. Moreover, Colin has also realized that the relationship between the Saint Sima family and the troll must not be simple. For the first time in the northern border, the troll was the biggest reliance on the Saint Simon family. And this time, Colin remembers that the most important chess piece of the Saint Simon family in Union City, that is, the Cis Sivere, was introduced by Prince Akamoto. Thinking about it, the situation where the Duke of St. Hilda is about to face is much more severe than the imagination of Collins. Well, you also sent someone to stare at the giant devil, and inform me if you have news. Yes, Master. Charles, you can help me train 3,000 cavalry again. If the instructor is not enough, you can go to the Log Knight. Yes, Master Viscount. After the Rigo Cavaliers return to Benjian City, let him recruit 5,000 infantry for training. Colin now feels a sense of urgency. If he wants to seek self-protection in the upcoming Northern Realm, and even take advantage of the situation, he must quickly expand the army. The steward of Yemen frowned and persuaded, "Master, in this way, the financial pressure of our family is too great." "You don't have to worry about this," Colin waved his hand and said boldly. "I have reached an agreement with Queen Aisha resist in foreign enemies." "That's great." The three Imam obviously did not understand the relationship between Colin and Queen Aisha. At this moment, he heard this agreement that was so favorable to the Angra family, and suddenly showed a surprise that was unbelievable. This agreement is simply saying that the kingdom of Semi-Lwaguo helps Angra family to raise the army. Colin smiled with a reserved and then shifted the topic, "For the rebellion of Benjian City, do you think someone is promoted behind?" Yemen immediately said, "Master, I suspect that the Tulip Chamber of Commerce will make trouble behind it. Although there is no direct evidence, they are the first to start hoarding food so that the price of food will rise, which will cause famine. Then immediately control the person in charge of their Chamber of Commerce in the city." "Master, will you stimulate the Count Uman? After all, the chairman of this Tulip Chamber of Commerce is his lover Penny." "You don't need to catch people with the reason for inciting the rebellion." Colin suddenly remembered the means of the old king of Yunyu City to deal with the Fengxinza Chamber of Commerce. "What reason do we use? Just say they suspect that they evade taxes." This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 169. Chapter 169 Beilu City, Part 1. Bailubao is located in the city of Beilu. This looks nonsense, but in fact, there is a bloody history hidden behind it. The capital of the east is Ningxiang City, known for its various precious spices. Over time, even the entire city was influenced by the aroma. It was not the taste of pure spices, but the fragrance of the long-term precipitated history of hundreds of years. Bards once described it like this: "Even if Ningxiang City disappears from the world, you can still smell its fragrance from the map." However, no one expected that the words of this phrase were actually a word. Ningxiang City, the capital of this spice, was finally wiped out of the world in the ban on the 10 Order Mage to launch. Only a giant pit that has become a lake today, and the faint fragrance on the map. Fortunately, the castle of the St+ family in the East Beilu Castle was built outside the city of Ningxiang, which was able to escape the catastrophe. However, some people believe that the reason why the mage originally used Ningxiang City as the destroyed goal was because Bailubao was not in the city. The mage hopes to show their strength to the nobles of the empire through this and let them jealous, instead of destroying a paladin family, completely intensifying the contradictions, making both sides endlessly. In short, since then, the St+ family and the Mage Assembly finally reached an agreement that did not interfere with each other and did not invade each other. Ningxiang City is destroyed, but life must continue. Through this incident, the people of Dongjing finally realized one thing still mixed with the aristocratic master. As a result, when the East China was rebuilt in the city, the new city decisively surrounded Beilu Castle in it, and even the name was changed to Beilu City. In fact, the East people do not have any achievements in military. The city of a mage makes them helpless. If it is not bordering the elves of the East, the elves who also hate the war, I am afraid that this region may not be a glorious empire. Although the military collapses, the artistic accomplishments of the East people are quite high. Even the elves who have not completely retired from Huia Forest have not yet completely retired from Huia Forest. One Pulse. Bailubao, located in the center of Beilu City, is also the most proud architectural masterpiece. The whole piece of Han white jade is inlaid with white and flawless. Even in the night without moonlight, it will emit a cold glow, like the palace of the gods coming to earth. In the center of the square in front of the castle, a huge white horse sculpture is expanding wings, as if it will rise in the next second. This is the eclectic emblem of the St plus family pure day done. The night fell, and the bonfire was lit. Hundreds of East Cavaliers wore pure white armor and surrounded by sculptures. They all looked solemn, with both hands and swords, bowed their heads and prayed. Below the sculpture, a woman in a white pastor robe is leading the Cavaliers' prayers. Her voice was dreamy, but she seemed solemn and solemn. The Lord's glory is everywhere, it will lead the hero of the deceased to return to his temple. Peace, fearless warriors. The female priest looked in her 40s, but the charm was still there, and the holy glory covered her in her body added a strange charm to her. As she prayed, a middle-aged man in the Duke dresses walked into the square. He is the owner of the East Duke of St plus. I saw the Duke of Dongjing came to the female pastor, his left hand buckled his chest, bowed and saluted, and said, "The grace of the Lord of Glory is forever, and the soul of the warriors will be restless." His voice was soft, with a hint of hoarseness, and was very infectious. After the Duke of the East was finished, he raised his head, and his complexion became extremely hard. I saw that he pulled out the sword on his waist, lifted his head, pointed at the sky, and a big channel. But their will be inherited, and their hatred will be kept in mind. In a series of sword-pulling swords, the knights gathered on the square followed the Duke of St plus, raised the sword to the sky, and shouted together. Inherit the will, keep in mind hatred. Nympho. After the ceremony of sacrifice in Heroes, the cavaliers dispersed. Earl Evan slowly walked over and saluted towards the only Duke San Polos and female priests on the square and greeted, "Father, Mother." It turned out that the female pastor turned out to be the Duke. Duke of St. Plus looked at his second son, and said coldly, "What, are you here to help the Viscount of Austin?" Earl Evan turned his eyes and laughed, "I'm actually here to help my brother say love." "What do you mean? Your brother is still a captive of the Angle family now. What is the use of love to tell me?" Earl Evan did not answer this question directly, but instead said in the end, "Father, Viscount Austin has been kneeling in Balabeo for 3 days and 3 nights, and the dripping water has not entered, and it will go on like this even if he uses the body of his 4 order knights. I am afraid I can't carry it anymore." "Huh, do you sympathize with him? Who will sympathize with the 200,000 soldiers of the Tianma Legion?" "No, my father, I didn't sympathize with Viscount Austin. However, if the Viscount Austin, who was the deputy, kneeled in Bala Castle, then, what punishment should I be punished?" Duke of St plus raised his brows and hummed, "You really come for your brother?" Earl Evan smiled and persuaded, "Yes, father, if you are unwilling to forgive Viscount Austin now, how can there be reason to forgive him after redeeming his brother in the future?" Duke of St plus didn't feel good at, "Why do you think I am forgive Vincent's waste?" "Oh, don't you plan to forgive your brother? That's great," Earl Evan clamored. Instead he shouted even more excitedly, "When can I inherit the position of my brother's marquis?" "You want to be beautiful," Duke of Sanpla stared at each other and said angrily. But Earl Evan was not scared at all, but asked in shock, "No, father, if the position of this marquis is not passed on to me, who do you plan to pass it? Isn't it Anna? Just her stupid look, you are really going to hand over the East to her hand inside?" The Duke of Sanplas was breathless, holding his horn tightly with his right hand, as if he had to wield his sword to split this unreasonable son in the next second. "Well, don't be noisy." The Duke stood up in a timely manner. "Evan, not allowed to talk to your father in this tone in the future, and it is not allowed to slander your brother and your sister at will." "Yes, mother." Earl Evan shrank his head. It seemed that the mother with a kind look and a state of words made him even more awe. Later, the Duke turned to look at her husband again. Are you ready to pull the sword for your child, and the Viscount Austin? Don't really let him die in Balabeo, it will damage your fame, which will damage your fame." "I know." Duke of St. Placide and strode into the castle. But after a few steps, I saw that Irvin didn't keep up, so he turned back to the order. I don't come here yet, I want to ask you something. Yes, Father. This chapter is finished. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 170. Chapter 170 Belu City, below. Get up, Vacus of Austin. Yes, Duke. Austin was struggling to stand up, but his legs had been kneeling for 3 days in the snow, and his legs were completely unacceptable, and he could not succeed after trying a few times. In the end, with the help of Earl Evan, he finally stood upright. Duke of St. Plus did not show a little sympathy and compassion for this. He glanced at the two indifferently, and then took the lead in entering the castle. Sit down. Thank you, Master Duke. The Austin, where his legs trembled, stood unstable, and sat down quickly, but in front of the Duke of St. Plus, he still did not dare to lean against the back of the chair, and his butt was only half of the butt. I buried my 200,000 troops, and I planned to kill you. The Viscount of Austin shook his body, but the next sentence of the Duke still relieved him. But I decided to spare you for hundreds of years of loyalty, for hundreds of years of loyalty. Thank you, Master Duke, your kindness, the Austin family must remember it. Duke of St. Plus looked at the Austin, who was almost crying, and flashed a trace of disdain in his eyes, but he still said, you go to Bingian City and tell Angle proposal, use Garcia to change Vincent. Yes, Viscount Austin responded quickly, and then he saw that there was no other command in Duke St. Plus, so he quickly got up and left. Later, the hall was quiet, and the father and son did not speak first, as if patience. In the end, the Duke of St. Plus couldn't see his son's laziness, and he rejected it. What are you doing here? Earl Evan's face was innocent, and he said, Father, don't you ask me to follow and say something to ask me. Duke of San Polo stared at each other, just wanted to pull the sword to cut the sword to death, this is not good, and he did not understand the inferiority. But after all, he still forced himself to calm down, and Shen Sheng asked, do you think we should insert a hand in the current situation in the northern border? Do we still have the strength to intervene? Earl Evan asked politely. The army forces of the Tianma Corps have basically been buried by my good brother. Are you going to send the water army to the north? Or, do you expect the private soldiers of the Lords of the East and let them go desperately with the northern people? So do you think we can only watch it? At least we have no strength to invade the northern border with great strength, however, we can't say anything. Duke of San Plus improved slightly, and asked, what do you do? The current situation in the north is about to start next, the San Sima family and the San Hilda family must fight for you to die, but before they are exhausted, we cannot end easily, otherwise, like this Shadow Canyon, it will become the Shadow Canyon, the knife in the hands of others. Hearing this, Duke of San Plus jumped, apparently poked by his son to the pain, but he did not have an attack, but continued to listen. So, our best choice is to watch Tiger fighting at the same time. You need to pay attention to two key figures. Which two? Marquis and Angle of Angle. Earl Evan slowly spit out two names, and then explained, Marquis of Judausen wants to realize the dream of Dwarf Foundation and be loyal to the Saint Sima family. Whoever is loyal, be able to help him realize this dream. Therefore, this is a force that can be attracted by us. And Angeli, the ability of this person, you must have seen it clearly through the World War I of the EU city. Although he is currently regarded as the power of the Duke of St. Hilda, I always feel that his loyalty is not firm. The person we was drawn. Duke of St. Plus nodded slowly and agreed with his son's words. Earl Evan is still saying, in addition, the attitude of the royal family is also very important. I think that the hatred between the St. Laurent family and the St. Sima family, they may not be willing to see the northern border falling into Saint in the north in the hands of the Simon family. it is likely to end in person when the St. Hilda family can't hold it. If the St. Lauren family personally goes to the north, what else can the St. Sale family have a chance? Not necessarily. Earl Evan shook his head. Many people want to change a master in the north. Who are you talking about? Many people refer to. Earl's smile suddenly became a little fun. Aren't you one of them? Duke of St. Plus suddenly quietly calmed down, and even the rude gaze with the rude look of Earl Evan could not make him angry. However, the Duke of St. Plus did not respond to the only point of his son's sentence just now. For a long time, Earl Evan suddenly yawned and laughed. Father, if there is nothing else, I will go back to rest first. Duke of St. Plus nodded and didn't say anything more. Watching the son's back slowly disappeared outside the hall, Duke of St. Plus struggled a little. What? My heart is moving, a soft voice suddenly sounded, and the Duke who changed the clothes appeared in the hall. The Duke of St. Plus seemed to understand what his wife said, sighed, and shook his head. Evan is really intelligent, but, to become the Master of the East, it is not just intelligent. Not to mention. The Duke stepped forward, gently rubbed his husband's shoulder, and said softly, are you worried about the Lords of the East? Yeah, Vincent has been the Marquis of East China for so long, and has been cultivated by me as the first heir. So many East Lords have bet on him. If I abolish him now, those Lords may not have this courage. Of course it doesn't matter if those who don't rebet. But about Earl Hall, he married Vincent's most baby daughter. There is also Earl Brugen, and his Chamber of Commerce has provided Vincent with how much money to support you. And the Austen family was almost tied with Vincent. I don't know if they should say they are smart or scold them stupid. Once these families saw me abolished Vincent and let them invest in the water for many years, do you say, can they not resent me? Especially when the Tianmakor was just hit hard, an accidental, maybe it was a chaos. With a sigh, he said leisurely, to be honest, I actually admire the Duke of St. Hilda, and I actually have the courage to start with myself if I can clean up in the East. Vincent's idiot. The position of the Marquis is not to be abandoned. The Duke was silent, and after a long time, he said again, but you are so eccentric, Vincent. Evan's resentment will only get bigger and bigger. Duke of St. Plus sneered, without the corresponding strength support, what's the use of resentment? The Duke's eyes flashed and proposed, you start to help Ivan plant forces now, it's not too late. Duke of St. Plus groaned for a moment, but still shook his head. Wait a look. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 171. Chapter 171 points. The sky was gloomy, and the dark clouds of darkness seemed to be shrouded in the earth without seeing the margins. The war in Benjian City has stopped, but the people's mood is still heavy. Especially those who surrendered, they were put on their feet, squatting at the foot of the city wall shivering, and their hearts were full of despair. Hey, Lame, do you say that the Lord is going to starve to us? The slave named Lame Legs touched his head and muttered, how can I know? Do you still need to think about it? Another slave said weakly on the ground, now the city is lacking in food, how can the Lord's a waste of food on us? Then, are we waiting for death like this? Otherwise, do you still want to kill? The questioning of the slave's body could not be trembling. It seemed to think of the terrible scene of the Black Cavalry's charge, and suddenly shut up and didn't speak. The breath of despair becomes stronger. The death of the slaves was even attracted to a few vultures hovering in the air. They are waiting for the upcoming feast. The lame leg was a little unwilling. He was still young and didn't want to die. Looking at the soldiers who were patrolling around, he hesitated for a long while, and he seemed to have enough courage. But just when he struggled to stand up and was about to walk towards the soldiers, he suddenly saw that the gate of not far away opened. In the sound of horseshoe, a huge caravan slowly entered the city of Benjian. The lame legs do not care about the caravan, he only cares about eating. Adult, Adult. Are you calling me? The soldiers looked at the lame legs that were approaching, holding the handle in their right hand, and vigilant. Stand in place, don't approach. Yes, yes. What's your business? Adult. I'm really hungry, can you give something to eat? The lame leg bowed his waist and prayed, I have a lot of energy, I can help you work, everything can be done. Don't worry, you will arrange you to work later. Then, are you eaten? Yes, as long as you are willing to work. Really, the lame legs couldn't believe that such a good thing would really happen. What do I lie to you? The soldiers waved impatiently, go back honestly. The lame leg did not go back, but asked nervously, Adult, adult, isn't it lack of food in the city now, how can you give us something to eat? The soldiers pointed to the caravan who were entering the city, do you know what those who are transporting in the car? Hurry his head stupidly. It's food, said the soldier proudly. Really, real? His eyes shook with his eyes, and his body trembled excitedly. The soldiers no longer wanted to ignore this annoying slave, and waved his hand and asked him to go back quickly. His legs were soft, and he knelt on the ground immediately, constantly hoeing in the direction of the red castle, and thought in your mouth. Thanks to the Lord, praise the Lord. His weird moves also caused the curiosity of other slaves, and they all gathered around. Then, the lame was told other slaves to the good news. Soon, the news spread quickly like a plague. More and more slaves began to learn how to lame, kneeling on the ground and constantly hoeing, praising the kindness of the kindness. For a moment, the entire Bengian city seemed to survive, and the deadly anger shrouded in the head of the city gradually dissipated. It didn't take long for the soldiers to divide the slaves into groups of about 10 people. Each group was led by a soldier to allocate different tasks, such as repairing the city walls, cleaning the streets, and building refugee camps. The lame leg was assigned to a mission of a house in the maintenance city. When he followed the leading soldier to the collapsed house, he suddenly was a little embarrassed. Because he remembered that he had rushed into this house and snatched something. With a trace of shame, the lame leg came forward and started to work. A slave next to him still asked the leading soldiers with some unbelievable way, Adult, when do we have something to eat? There is noon, work quickly. Well. As soon as a group of slaves were eaten, they didn't care about hunger and fatigue, and they immediately lived. Nympho. At noon, he was squeezed in the long slave team and walked to the place where the food was collected. I don't know how long, he finally smelled a faint meat. Guru. For a while, the sound of swallowed water came one after another. The lame leg stretched out his neck and looked forward, but he could only see a high platform and a huge iron pot on it. After a long wait, the lame legs finally came to the high platform. The soldiers handed him 3 pieces of black bread and a bowl of hot soup. It is a broth, but in fact, the shadow of meat is not seen at all. Only a layer of fat and faint meat aroma floating on it prove that it is indeed not water, but the broth. Faced with such food, the lame was crying directly. It's not that the food is too bad, but it's great. As a slave, he has never eaten meat in his life. Now I can have a broth to drink. I feel that my life is worth it. Dip in the broth, stuff the black bread into the stomach in a few sips, and then did not get hot, and directly poured the broth in the bowl into the stomach in one breath. Feeling the warmth from the abdomen to the whole body, the lame leg suddenly felt full of energy. Adults, do you eat after the afternoon? Do you still eat it? Of course. What about tomorrow? Tomorrow also. What about the next day? You are endless. The soldier was angry and glared at the lame. As long as you work for the Lord, you will have a meal. At this moment, the lame legs don't know what to say. The Lord is in his heart, as if he is at the same height as the Lord of Glorious. Not only do you eat, the soldiers gathered their groups of slaves to explain, there are still points. Points, the slaves looked at each other and didn't know what it meant at all. Can the points, can you eat it? The lame legs asked tremblingly. The soldiers laughed and shook their head and said, you can't eat points, but it is very useful. Before the slaves continued to ask questions, the soldiers announced, the most serious thing about doing this morning is the lame, everyone has no opinion. The slaves shook their heads, and the lame legs were indeed the one with the most work today. Everyone looked at it. Okay, I will give my legs in a point this morning. The soldiers immediately took out a roll of shellacate paper and started to record. The lame is still confused. Adult, point, what's the use? Points, you can help you get rid of the identity of slavery and become a free people. Liberty. Now the rest of the slaves can't sit still. They surrounded the soldiers and asked, adults, how many points can it become a freedom? I don't know. The soldiers spread their hands. The Lord said that the 10 slaves with the most points in the city can become a free people. Row. The slaves yelled excitedly. They do not know how many slaves in the city, how rare the 10 places of each month are. However, they have seen hope, the hope of class transition. This hope made their spiritual appearance refreshing, as if it was completely another person. At the beginning of the afternoon, all the slaves were crazy and grabbed to work, for fear of being compared with their companions. A fanatic emotion gradually shrouded the Bingian city. This chapter is finished.